Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, we have a lot of stuff to cover today.
Do we?
Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks, and as I drove up here today, my car's black.
Yes.
Right.
Is it yellow now?
Well, I'm one of the first people in Moore County who can tell you when pollen starts.
I'm sure you are.
It started, and the reason I say that as an opening is because we are going to talk about landscaping, grasses.
Mm-hmm.
People are now looking out their window and they're seeing the pink magnolia trees in full bloom.
Yep.
They're starting to think, spring might be around the corner. The forecast for next week is, temperatures are going to be in the 60s, and I think it's going to hit 70 1 or 2 days.
Probably.
And so now when it rains, we notice, it's a little cleaner out there.
Yes.
We're going to we've got, 6 weeks, 7 weeks of pollen coming up?
Probably.
And so
we're all bracing for the yellow clouds.
Well, we're going to be speaking this morning with Chris Kelso, who is the owner of Got Grass. It's a turf management company, and he is a very interesting guy. He's a Moore County native, and before we segue to Chris, I wanted to touch base with you because you remember our guest last week, Erin Skinner.
Yes, very fascinating show.
Her company is Thrive. She is a nutritionist. And remember I said I'm going to set up an appointment with her?
Yes.
Well,
you made that appointment, I'm sure.
Well, I did.
Uh-oh.
Yep. And I have to tell you, she's very impressive.
Good.
Good listener. She probably runs into every client that comes in, brings a different set of, different personality.
You didn't give her too much trouble, did you?
No,
Good.
I hope she'll answer that question. But everybody, when it comes to their relationship to foods and what they eat, do you know how exhausting it is to think about what you eat?
Yes. I have a family of 5.
Okay, well, I don't have a family of 5, but
it's exhausting just thinking about cooking a dinner every night.
I've spent my whole life just eating. When I'm hungry, I eat what I want.
Right.
And so now
I have to change all that stuff, don't you?
Yeah, a little bit of a low-carb diet, a lower sugar diet.
Well, it's not too difficult.
Every time I look at a piece of food, I put it in my brain and I start to process. Where does this go? Do I eat it? Do I not? I'm exhausted. And I told her flat out, I said, she wanted to give me an app, and she's basically trying to help me redirect my eating habits.
Yeah.
And I realized very quickly that it's a big commitment.
It is.
But I had a lot of confidence in her, love her offices, love her demeanor, and she also gave me the name of a chef, a local chef who prepares meals and does things that can be normal meals that are delivered, I assume. They could be low sugar, low carb, high protein, And so I've reached out to her, and I'm waiting to hear back from her. But I just wanted to give you that follow-up.
Cool.
I was real glad that I went, and I'm looking forward to keeping up a communication with Erin.
Good.
And I think, Erin probably goes, well, Bill's going to do what Bill's going to do, and I'm going to work with him and work around him and do the best I can, and I'm going to have to be the one that's going to have to probably give in a little more.
Yes, you probably will.
Could you imagine the conversation we had?
I can only imagine the conversation you had.
She's a cool lady. So she gave me the name of this lady who is a chef here in town. And interestingly enough, my guest today, Chris Kelso of Got Grass Turf Management, who I met through a referral from Bronzy Lawson, who is a a great trim carpenter and a guy that I just really trust, a very ethical guy. And he immediately mentioned Chris to me. Since I had bought my home 4 years ago, I had never really done a whole lot with the centipede grasses and I don't know how many grasses I have. All I know is I came from New Jersey, and in New Jersey you had fescue.
So didn't you have like postage square size pieces of grass?
No,
around?
it isn't that.
Oh, no.
The fescue is a very soft grass.
Oh, okay.
You can walk on it barefoot and it feels great. Here, you could draw blood.
Yeah.
I mean, the grasses are so hard.
Yes.
So I reached out to Chris. Chris came out. I was really impressed with him and his presentation and what he's going to do over the course of a year for me. And I have a lot of grass, more than most, because most people here have pine straw, and then they have sections of grass, and which looks beautiful for separation. But for me, I think I have, Chris, I think I have all grass. It's an acre and a quarter. I have pine straw in the beds. I don't have any pine straw in areas that you would normally grass. Do you see that a lot?
No, normally it's a lot of pine straw.
It's a lot of pine straw,
Yeah.
and you're doing sections and right.
Yeah.
But in reading about you, aside from the fact that you are a native Moore County resident, you were born and raised here in Whispering Pines. You were a chef in your first life, which is crazy because you're so young, but you had a first life.
I did. I love to cook, and I went to culinary school. I actually went to Sandhills my junior and senior year of high school, and then my first real job was at the Country Club Whispering Pines when I was 15.
When you were 15.
Mm-hmm.
So were you working as like a short order cook? Were you?
So I started as a busboy,
Yeah.
and then I went to dishwasher,
Okay.
and then
I'm waiting for the food.
And then I could drive my golf cart to and from work because I lived in Western Pines, and they gave me keys to open the kitchen, and I started cooking.
Is that right?
Yep.
So you just learned it in a very organic way.
Yep.
Where'd you go to culinary school?
I went to Sandhills, and then I finished my degree in Baltimore at Baltimore International College.
No kidding. So you set out. How old were you when you set out on that career?
I moved to Maryland in 2005.
Okay.
So I was 20.
For schooling,
Mhm.
and after that.
I got recruited by Marriott, and I was a chef for Marriott
Okay.
for 4 years. I was in Maryland, Charleston, South Carolina, and then Kingsport, Tennessee.
At resorts, at restaurants.
They were full-service hotels.
Okay. So you had how many years in as a chef?
Almost 16. We'll call it 15.
Really?
Yeah.
So you took a path. You thought you were on the right path.
I did.
What happened?
I had my son. So, as anybody knows that's in the food industry, you work nights, weekends, and holidays.
Oh,
And I don't think I gave my son a single bath when he
Oh.
was a child. So, I made the decision that I needed a change of career.
yeah.
I had a membership at the Hyatt in Maryland, and I was out playing golf. And the superintendent was out hand watering, and I went up and talked to him and asked if he was hiring, and he laughed at me. And he said, "We are always hired on the golf course." And he told me the pay, and I said,
And then you laughed at him.
and I did, but I was ready for a change.
Yeah.
And they started me off in the bunkers on the golf course.
Really?
Yep,
You were married at the time?
I was. And my son was 5,
How old is your son now?
14.
Oh, wow. So that was a come down
A big come down.
financially. Your ego must have been like, when you're faced with a change of direction in your life, it takes a lot of courage to step back and step down to rebuild to maybe something better. Did you know what that was going to be?
I didn't. Luckily, I had a good support system. My wife was also in nursing school,
Oh, wow.
So it was a lot for all of us, but we had a really good support system in Maryland. Her mom helped us out a lot with my son, and it was nice because I was working 6:30 to 2:30, so I had nights off. I worked every other weekend from 5:30 to 9, so I basically had all my weekends back, and we did a lot more traveling and enjoying each other's family time. So
Yeah. Generally speaking, the restaurant business, the service business, service-oriented business, the hours are numbing. You don't live a calendar year like everybody else. It's not a 9 to 5. And you're right, late nights, you pass in the night sometimes, and it can drain you.
it does. I was so in the hotel. They said you had a choice of holidays you wanted to work or be off, and
They gave you Flag Day and Arbor Day.
yeah. So as the chef, I said I'll take the one that nobody's working. Well, it was Christmas. Me and one other person went Christmas Day from open to close because everybody else wanted to be off with their families, and my wife was pregnant, so it didn't matter for me to be home. And I worked Christmas from open to close by myself with one other person in the kitchen
Where was this?
in Charleston.
Wow. And this was in a hotel
Mm-hmm.
situation. So people are guests, they travel, they're visiting family and friends, and sure, you're busy. Those are days that holidays are huge.
Yeah.
So you got a job starting in the bunkers. This doesn't sound promising.
It didn't, but my superintendent was awesome. They saw very quick I picked up fast on it, so I started mowing tees, and then I went to greens, and then I went to fairways.
How old were you?
I didn't start until 2015, 31.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And your son was about 7 at the time, 6 at the time?
Yeah. Um, Probably
No.
6.
Yeah, 5 or 6.
Yeah.
Wow. And you had been married how many years at that point?
14.
Gosh. How did your wife feel about this transition?
She was nervous, but I was happier.
I'm on your wife's side. I'm nervous too for you. I'm waiting for the second part of this.
So I was happier, and that's what
Yeah.
was better. I wasn't bringing work home with me. So when I got done working at 2:30 and I clocked out, that's when the superintendent would go out and hand water greens or put out chemicals, and I would ride with them and for free. I wouldn't get paid, and just learn as much as I could. And I did that almost a year.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I think you're ready for an assistant job, a second assistant job. You don't need to be mowing greens anymore. You have the knowledge, you have the school, even though it wasn't turf grass. And so he actually helped me get my first, it was a second assistant job at a country club. And I made a little bit more money.
Yeah.
And while I was doing that, I decided to open my got grass lawn care business in Maryland, part time.
Uh-huh.
So it was me and one other person.
Uh-huh.
And he basically did a lot of it because I was working full time at the golf course. And I would help him when I got off from the golf course if he needed my help. And then in 2016, my stepdad got diagnosed with cancer. So I moved back here, sold my business in Maryland, and was here to help my mom and take care of her, and didn't know what I was going to do. And my stepdad had a welding fabrication shop for 40 plus years, and I ran that for them for almost 2 years. And then I decided to open Got Grass Lawn Care back up, and I did full service probably 3 years, and the pandemic happened.
Yeah. Oh boy. Yeah, you're right.
And what I realized is, one, nobody wanted to work.
Right.
And two,
Yeah.
customers were at home and they wanted to
Yep.
save money,
Yep.
so they started mowing their own grass. Well, what I realized is not anybody, but a lot of people can mow their own grass,
Right.
but they don't know how to care for it.
Yeah. So when you started your business in Maryland, after you had been tutored on the golf course and you were the second assistant, can you just like wake up one day and start a business? Do you need, is there training, that licensing that needs to be done because you're using chemicals? And I mean, what's the education that you have to have?
So you have to have a pesticide license.
Pesticide license.
And you can get it through the state. In North Carolina, you have to take the state exam. If you don't have prior experience, you can do a class. It's a 2 to 3 day class, and then after the class, you can take your test. Once you pass your test, then you pay the state for your license,
Yeah.
and then you have to get continuing ed credits every. It's a 5 year,
Okay.
and you have to get so many credit hours during the 5 years.
Do you know how many hours that is off the
It's
top?
15.
A total of 15?
15, but you can't take all 15 your first year, and you can't take all 15 your last year.
Okay.
So they make it to where you have to divide it up.
Yeah. My guess is that being in the turf management business, the best teacher is experience, not the classwork so much. I mean, once you get your pesticide license, knowing soils and knowing climates. I mean, these are just things that then become second nature to you.
It is, and that's the biggest thing. I actually, on the way here, I got off the phone with a lady that called me about her yard, and she was like, "I'm going to put pre-emergent out March the 15th," and I'm like, "Why March the 15th?" She said, "Well, that's the date everybody does it." I'm like,
Yeah.
"Dates have nothing to do with anything. It's all about soil temperatures." And I said, "You've missed the window by about 6-7 weeks ago."
Is that right?
Yeah.
Pre-emergent should go down in February in the
It
cold?
depends on the soil temp. So we got 3 days of 50-degree soil temps,
Okay.
and once you hit 3 days, that's when my go time for pre-emergent. So I was completely done by about the 10th of February with my first round of pre-emergent.
So I got in on your second round.
1.5.
Okay.
So I'll hit you again.
Okay, I'll tell you what. We're going to come back, and I'm going to hit you again in the second set. We're talking with Chris Kelso. He is the owner of Got Grass Turf Management Company here he lives in West End, born and raised in Moore County, and interesting guy. I want to ask you some questions about grass. There's so many misconceptions about care, and you ask a lot of people, what kind of grass do you have? They don't know.
They don't.
They don't know.
It's green.
Yeah. This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our second set of All Things Moore County. Chris Kelso, the owner of Got Grass Turf Management, is our guest. We had a good time talking in the first set, sort of bringing us up to date just before COVID, and the trail that you blazed and the transition that you made, really midway through your career as a chef. But you started your turf company here. You moved back because of family reasons, and I guess you got rolling for 2 or 3 years, and then COVID hit. People were home mowing their lawns, and that's kind of where we left off.
Yep. So, like I said, COVID hit. People were starting to make cutbacks, and a lot of them started mowing their own yards. And so I love turf. I've always loved turf.
Where'd that come from?
So when I was a kid, my grandparents,
Yeah.
they told me I was going to get a job working for the state mowing on the side of the road. Like, that's how much I love
Is that right?
grass.
You knew? Okay.
So I didn't quite go working for the state,
Okay.
but I started my own business. So, in talking to customers, what I realized is that a lot of them would mow. They could weed eat, edge, pick up pine cones and sticks, but they didn't know how to treat their yards. They didn't know when to put chemicals out, what chemicals to put out. They had no idea how to work the irrigation systems.
Right.
So
I'm in that boat.
I found kind of a niche that I enjoy turf, and I can do it by myself. I don't need employees.
Do you work by yourself?
I work by myself. Sometimes my son will come help, blow off the driveway if I get fertilizer on it. But I can do it by myself, which is nice.
Yeah.
So I don't have to worry about employees showing up to work and
Yeah. You so there's a freedom about what you do. You don't answer to anybody. You run your own show. You're in your own business. I admire that completely. I mean, that's what we all we hope for. We aspire to, and you've done it,
I did. It's not easy,
right?
but it's well worth it. Being
Yeah.
able to take time off if I need to, work a lot more if I have to, but there's a good life balance.
Yeah, right. And that's what you were. That's what precipitated the career change.
Yep.
So you got to the other side, and my guess is you're doing better than the pay you had as a second assistant in Maryland, right? Or your first job in
Yeah.
Maryland. When you came by my place, we walked the grounds, and I'd just like you to walk me through what you saw, because I probably am typical of a lot of people who say, oh, I have a lawn, but I've never really paid attention to it. I've only lived where I lived for 4 years. But the property that I have is worth keeping it up and making it look beautiful, because it's a beautiful yard. You pulled your truck up in the driveway. We met, we shook hands, we walked the grounds, and you asked me a couple of questions of where's the irrigation system. Tell me what you were looking at when you were eyeballing everything. And be perfectly fair. It's fine. There are no bodies buried there. That I know.
So the first thing I noticed when I pulled up was there was a lot of moss.
Yeah.
And typically, moss comes from one of two things: too much water or too much shade. And we knew it wasn't the water issue. I'd check downspouts coming off the house for the gutters to see if that's what's causing the water. Wetlands, you get some. Sometimes you get some like live streams, like in Western Pines, underneath the ground.
Yeah.
But I noticed that you didn't have
Right.
any water issues, so it comes back to shade. So then we were talking about it, and it is, but all your moss is basically from the shade.
Mm-hmm.
So then we continue to walk around, and we notice weeds, which is a sign from not putting out pre-emergent.
Mm-hmm.
And then the grass type. So you have 95% of centipede, and then you had some Bermuda mixed in.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times when I go to a property, I would say over half don't even know what kind of grass they have. And that's huge, because how you treat one grass versus the next grass is important.
Yep.
Centipede, it likes to be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
It don't like a lot of water.
Right.
And
Oh boy, I overwater. Okay.
it's something you don't like to mess with. So I offer two plans, a premium and a basic. And if I see centipede or the customer has centipede, I don't even bring up the premium, because the grass doesn't need everything I would do to a premium yard.
So centipede is a lower maintenance grass for this area than Bermuda,
Yes. If it's healthy.
if it's healthy. Okay.
A lot of the centipede's difficult, because if it becomes unhealthy, it takes so much longer for it to get it back. Where Bermuda Georgia yard, within 2 to 3 weeks during the growing season, you wouldn't even notice you had an issue. Where centipede could take a year to 2 years if it's unhealthy.
Okay. On a 10-point scale, how healthy was my centipede? Be honest. Was it 2 or 3? Dorothy, he's going to say 4 to make me feel good.
You had some good parts.
Yeah.
The left side of your driveway,
Ugh.
where the moles were,
Yeah.
that was 5-ish. The backyard by the pool, some parts were 1 or 2.
Yep.
And then back towards the road, a 6. By your driveway,
On Valley.
3 or 4.
Uh-huh. I feel like I'm at the dentist, and they're testing the margins in my gums, and if the numbers are like 5 or 6, that's not good. You want lower numbers. Here it's just the opposite. Okay, so you have to treat it all uniformly as much as possible.
Yeah.
Okay, so I pointed out to you, and I'm sure a lot of people have this issue, moles. Why do and you get these craters,
You do.
and you look overnight. You come out the next day, and there are craters, and you start stamping on them like you're mashing grapes. What are they there for?
A nuisance. So when people get moles or voles, most of the time it's because they have insects in the soil, whether
Uh-huh.
it's earthworms, grubs. And this time of the year, I'll get phone calls. Hey, I got grubs. I'm like, why do you think you have grubs? Like, because
Right.
I have moles.
Yeah, right.
Well, it's not even the time for them to come up to the surface yet. Let's look back at the weather. Well, we've had nonstop rain, over an inch of rain a day,
Yeah.
which is earthworms.
Okay.
Moles are like us. We have to eat. So
Okay.
that's what they're going after as a food source. And to get rid of the moles or voles, you have to get rid of the food source.
How do you get rid of the food source?
Depends on the food source.
Okay.
So you put down insecticides to get rid of the food source.
Did you do that?
I have not yet.
You want the earthworms just to congregate
Yeah.
and have a Thanksgiving at my expense?
Absolutely.
Did you ever see the movie Caddyshack?
Yes.
Okay. So most people, when they look at that, Bill Murray is out there as a greenskeeper, and they had moles, and he was chasing them through the movie.
Dynamite.
Yeah, and right, he's trying to dynamite them, and they're playing with them. That's what it feels like, and I take it personally. I mean, it hurts my feelings to see them. I don't want them, but I don't want to keep. I just there's stuff you can throw on those mounds that chase the moles away, but they'll come back, right?
Yeah. So what's nice is when you're treating for them, I tell my customers, as long as they're not in your yard, I don't care where they go.
Mm-hmm.
And that's fine. We'll treat them in your yard. They can go to the neighbor's yard, and maybe they'll call me to come help them out. But we try to get them out of the customer's yard so they can go somewhere else. And it is, I would say, 5 of my customers pretty much have mole or vole issues year round.
How many?
4 or 5
That's it?
customers. But I'm saying nonstop
Okay.
mole or vole issues.
Okay.
I've researched it for them. I'm like, you can get the solar things that make noises in the ground, trap them, and nothing seems to work. It's like Caddyshack. They got a mind of their own.
Yeah. So when do you start to you treat with insecticide, and does the insecticide harm the grasses?
This insecticide does not harm the grasses. I normally do my insecticide treatment mid-June, and it will last for a year, and I'm going after the insects in the soil.
Yeah.
And that's why, and when I go to a customer, depending on how bad the yard is, what's going to make the biggest difference first. And with your yard, it was the weeds.
Okay.
So I came out right away and did
Pre-emergent.
pre and post emergent.
Pre and post-emergent.
Yep. So I'm spraying and killing the weeds you have currently,
Yep.
and then I'm preventing more weeds from coming back
Okay.
that haven't germinated yet.
Okay. I'm going to come back in the third set. I want to continue to talk about how you treat. I want to talk about the differences between Zosia, Bermuda, and Centipede, and what you recommend for people who perhaps they're building a new home. Perhaps they want to put sod. As far as maintenance goes in this particular climate, what's the best to do? And I want to talk about your service plans, which you offer people. Chris Kelso is our guest. Got Grass Turf Management Company is his company, and we'll be back in the third set. Welcome back to our third and final set with Chris Kelso of Got Grass Turf Management. People sometimes wait a little bit too long in the season to start addressing issues because they use the weather as the indicator, right? And they go, whoops, pollen's starting, it's warm out, I better take care of this, take care of that. And it may be they're a month or two behind to get started. So we, I was asking you about the different grasses. I've always thought zoysia was like a hybrid that was like a cross between fescue on one end where it was super soft, and then you've got the Bermuda, which is pretty hardy but kind of hard. But the zoysia is kind of softer and pretty grass. Is it a good grass for this climate, and what are the differences between the grasses that you see?
Zoysia is probably my favorite grass.
Right.
It's shade tolerant. Um, it is a little more high maintenance,
Yep.
but the look of it, the
Yep.
feel of it, definitely is better.
Yep.
When somebody calls me and asks me, "Hey, I'm getting ready to put sod out. What do you recommend?" My first question is, "Do you have kids and do you have dogs?" Because if you do, I tell you to get Bermuda. Because look at the golf courses; they're full of Bermuda. They get play all the time. They get golf carts going through them. They can just bounce back a lot quicker.
Right.
And you see a lot of Bermuda. Depending on the area, the shade, there's a lot more zoysia. Centipede, I mean, centipede used to be the only grass. And if they have centipede now, it's either new construction where the builder put centipede, or it's an older home that has had centipede for 30 years.
Okay. So is centipede also the least expensive of the three?
Not really.
Oh.
It's not.
Oh. That's surprising.
It is. And that's what people think. And centipede is actually harder to find. You can't, the last time when I was doing my full service, I had to go to Raleigh to get centipede. The sod farms in Rayford and Candor didn't have centipede because it takes so long for it to grow.
Yeah.
They couldn't turn the farms over fast enough.
Yeah.
So they just weren't messing with centipede anymore.
Claire Bruno, who used to do a lot of work for me, Claire passed 2 years ago now. She would refer to centipede as a crawling grass. It would follow the sun, and it would just propagate on it almost on its own.
So it's something my grandpa told me a long time ago. So with centipede, you have a sleep, creep, and leap year.
Okay.
And so 1 year the centipede will take off. 1 year it won't go at all, and then another time it moves kind of slow. And it's funny because you'll see your runners take off in your pine straw.
Yep.
And I'm like, well, this is the leap year. So it depends, and that's the thing with centipede. If you have bad airs, it's really hard to get it to come back. It will take you a year, sometimes 2 years. Or if you have a Bermuda or Zoysia, I can get it back during the growing season fairly quick.
Okay.
So you were mentioning, hey, the pollen's out.
It's on my car. I don't know where else it is, but yeah.
Dandelions are popping up. I need to call a grass guy. And
yeah.
I don't want to say it's too late,
right.
But it kind of is because pre-emergence have already been put into the ground. So it's playing catch up. It's going to be spraying a lot more of getting rid of the weeds you have, and it's difficult.
Okay. What about as part of your service, aerating? Tell me about aeration. We see it on golf courses in the summertime, and we have to play through the putting greens are a little bumpy, but we know that they're giving them a chance to breathe.
Yep. So aeration, I recommend at least once a year, and I do it. I've always done it the week after Mother's Day, and last year it didn't work out very well.
Mid-May.
Mid-May. Last year it didn't work out very well. We had a really cool spring.
Yep.
And the grass wasn't thriving, so this year I actually pushed it back to the first week of June.
Okay.
And again, a lot of people move here from up north, and it's like, oh, I aerate in the fall. Well, you do because you have cool season grasses.
Because you have what?
Cool season grasses.
Okay.
Rye, fescues.
Yeah.
So people aerate in the fall because they're overseeding.
Okay.
You're not overseeding warm season grasses unless you want ryegrass in the wintertime.
Is it true when you overseed that you are robbing nutrients from the soil? I've heard people say that, and who knows if it's true.
Yes and no. I personally do not like overseeding. I don't recommend overseeding.
Okay.
There is a place for it. If a customer has a thin yard and they have animals or kids and we're trying to make turf so it's not dirt, I will recommend putting ryegrass through the winter.
Okay.
Other than that, you can't treat it the same way you can treat if it's dormant. I personally, if a yard is completely dormant in the wintertime and you see no green, you've done your job. When you overseed, you can hide weeds because your yard's green in the winter and you can't see the weeds from a distance. But when you go past a yard that is brown and you don't see a single green spot in it, you've done your job.
Oh, okay. Um, with aeration, you say you're going to do it in June. Does that give you an opportunity at that time also, since you have all these holes in the grass? Do you then feed it? I mean, if the patient's open, what do you do? Do you go in
So
and
when I aerate, if they're one of my customers, that's when I fertilize as well.
Okay.
If
Takes
they're not,
better.
I'll ask them if they want me to fertilize. Some people just want me to aerate for them. But when I aerate for my customers, I fertilize right then because the ground's broke open and it's getting the nutrients faster to the root system.
Okay. You made a statement that people tend to overwater their lawns,
They do.
and that's not a good thing.
Nope.
And why is that?
So, what more times than not, when I see people overwatering, it's they're getting water from their own source, meaning they have a pond or a lake that they're getting water from. They're not paying for it. When you pay for it, they wouldn't be watering every day like they do.
Okay.
By overwatering, you can get more insects, more weeds, moss. So it's a bad thing. You're better off watering a lot at one time than watering a lot. I mean, I've had people that water 3 hours a day. That's way too much water.
Okay.
So depending on the system, how long it takes for a head to rotate, I set people's clocks between 9 and 15 minutes per zone.
But some people will say in the middle of summer when it's so hot and the sun is beating down and it's dry, we haven't had a lot of rain, they're going to automatically water to take care of the lawn. What do you tell them?
We do it on the golf course. We're out there hand watering greens on the golf course in the middle of summer. You don't want to put a ton of water on it.
Okay.
But if you have to, if it's that dry, I recommend you water early in the morning. You don't want to water in the evening because that dew sits on the ground and the leaf blade overnight, which can cause fungus. So I recommend watering between 5 and 7:30 in the morning.
Okay.
But you can if you absolutely have. I mean, if you sod in the middle of summertime, you have to water it during the day.
Right. So would you recommend in a normal season where there's not a drought, where rain comes periodically, whether you have centipede, zoysia, or Bermuda 3 times a week?
Bermuda,
if you have an irrigation system, let's say.
Bermuda and Zosia might need a little bit more water.
Okay.
Centipede does not. I would say centipede you could water 2 to 3 times a day.
You mean a week?
A week.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
During the summer, and
Okay.
that's plenty for centipede because
Okay.
it just doesn't like anything. I would.
Sounds like centipede needs a psychiatrist.
It
and that
does. and it-
Zoysia
just
and
leave it alone.
Bermuda are perfectly fine on their own.
They are.
Okay. So 2 to 3 times a week for centipede, 3 to 5 times for Zoysia, Bermuda?
Most of them, depending on slopes, their soil, I would go 4 to 6 days a week.
4 to 6 days. Okay. So that's frequent.
Yeah.
Also, if you overwater, it seems to me that you would be compromising the root system because the roots don't have to reach out and grow to find water. You're just flooding them with
You're
it.
drowning them.
So it's like a helicopter parent. They've got a kid that they're just doing everything for the kid. The kid doesn't learn to fend for himself. Yeah. Does that?
Yep.
Okay, makes sense. What do you tell people, real quick, who have a lawn, they're not happy with it, they meet with you, and they want to switch grasses?
Switching grasses can be very costly.
Yeah.
Because you have to kill what's there,
Yeah.
then rip it all out, bring in topsoil, and lay new sod.
Yep.
And then if you don't have an irrigation system, you're having hoses all over the ground because you got to water 3 times a day.
And you're screwed.
You are. And most of the time, I'm honest, and I could tell if I can get their yard back.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, we can get it thriving. It's going to take 6 months to a year.
Okay.
But I tell people to hold off on tearing their yards up.
All right. Tell me about you get a phone call. Somebody calls you. They want you to come out and look at their property and assess. what a maintenance plan. How do you structure your maintenance plans? And we're just running short, but I want you to cover that.
So I get the phone call and I'll go out and meet with them. I'll walk the property with them, and then I offer two plans, a basic and a premium. Both of them include pre-emergent for spring and fall and fertilizer. The difference between basic and premium, the premium also has fungicide and insecticide. So if customers have Zosia or Bermuda, I'll
Understand.
suggest that they do the premium,
Okay.
and if it's centipede, the basic. If a centipede customer gets a fungus or insects, then I can apply like a la carte
Sure.
insecticide or fungicide, but 9 times out of 10, you won't need it.
And is there an extra charge when you have the moles we talked about earlier?
If you have a basic plan, if you have a premium plan, it's included.
Okay. I want an a la carte option on the moles. I mean, I'm going to start naming them personally. I mean, adopting them or something. I'm declare them as a tax write-off. Where can people reach you, and where can they read about you?
So you can go to our website. It's gotgrassturf.com. My Facebook is Gotgrass LLC, or you can call me at 910-603-2236.
Yeah, you're very well spoken. You inspire confidence. There are a lot of people who are out there who are landscapers who maybe are not. They're good at mowing, but not lawn treatment. So people need to be able to look at. You specialize in something that not everybody does.
Yeah, and a lot of the times when I go out, I'll notice a water issue, whether it's downspouts, and I can refer people for them to fix those issues.
Right.
To help so we can get their turf back to where it should be.
Yeah. You're a busy guy.
I am.
You made a great transition, and I'm glad Bronzy had reached out to me, because the type of referral that I received from him was one based on experience, which is the kind of referrals I like to give, not just to give a referral to look good. And I was so impressed with you. I think that the first day we met, I said, you need to come on and talk on the radio show because you have a lot to offer. Most people don't talk a whole lot about grass maintenance other than mowing. It was a pleasure. Got Grass Turf Management, and I was very pleased to know that you were working with a neighbor of mine right down the street. You
Yes.
said, so you are, you obviously get a lot of referrals.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, Chris, it was a pleasure. We'll see you for sure shortly.
Okay.
Everybody, have a great week. Thank you.